There was a time in this country when Black people could be punished for learning to read, and now some of the most challenged books in schools are written by Black authors. So, what is it about Black stories that has always carried that kind of weight? Today, we're talking Black books, Black identity, and why access to our stories has never been neutral. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Lisa.
And KK's here too. And you're listening to Blacktivities,
A celebration of all things Black.
Black culture, Black history,
Black perspectives, and Black panache.
Celebrating our Blackness doesn't mean exclusion.
Everybody's invited, but you gotta come in and have a seat.
So let the Blacktivities begin. Welcome to Blacktivities, where we connect Black history to the present with perspective, personality, and a little bit of panache. And if you don't know what that means, we use it to describe that extra seasoning that we as Black people put on everything. So I'm Shannon. I'm here with KK, and Lisa is MIA today. But we do have a special guest, Keisha Green, and I'll give her a proper introduction later. But today we're talking Black books and literature, how they shape who we are, and why access to them has always mattered. Ladies, what was the first book by a Black author that made you feel seen?
I don't know if I would say it made me feel seen. It just made me be like, wow, we got some stories. Coldest Winter Ever. Coldest Winter Ever, Fly Girl. I don't remember what was my first Eric Jerome Dickey book, but those books, I was like, wow, we got some stories.
Did you find those on your own, or?
I think when I got to college, I found them on my own, but reading in the younger formative years, it was more of the Judy Blooms, and the one like Black one I remember is the American Girl story, Addie. I even had the doll like that. So that was like my pinky toe in, but even that was not our story. Like, that's part of it.
It wasn't really a book per se. It was like Nikki Giovanni's poems and Maya Angelou and Langston Hughes. It was more so like poetry, and I was kind of fascinated by the Harlem Renaissance.
I would say, I was just going to say Maya Angelou, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings was the one for me, because, there was some similarities in our story, and I just fell in love with this elegant woman, and just everything she said and did, I was just captivated by her essence.
Yeah, if you're listening right now, pause right here and drop in the comments the first Black book that made you feel seen. We want to know what shaped y'all. Now, as we talked about in the first episode, there was a time where reading was illegal for us. So before we get into the discussion, let's take a look at the facts. It's time for Big Facts.
Big facts.
To answer the question, how do Black books shape who we are and why has access always mattered, we have to start with a time when access didn't exist. During slavery, many Southern states passed laws making it illegal for enslaved Black people to learn to read and write. After Nat Turner's rebellion in 1831, states like Virginia and South Carolina strengthened anti-literacy laws. Literacy was viewed as a threat because it allowed access to information, communication, and political ideas. Even with those laws, some enslaved people learned to read. In 1845, Frederick Douglass published Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, documenting slavery from his own lived experience. Harriet Jacobs published her narrative in 1861. Those books did something significant. They preserved firsthand accounts of slavery in a country where most written records were controlled by enslavers. Black literature began as documentation. It recorded history from the inside. After emancipation, Black literacy rates rose quickly. By 1900, more than half of Black Americans were literate. That shift meant more than education. It meant participation in politics, religion, journalism, and publishing. By the 1920s, during the Harlem Renaissance, writers like Langston Hughes and Zora Hurston were publishing poetry and fiction centered on Black life. Their work expanded how Black identity appeared in American literature. Instead of being portrayed through stereotypes, Black characters were complex, regional, educated, spiritual, working class, urban, rural. Literature became a way to define identity from within the community. In the mid-20th century, authors like James Baldwin and Toni Morrison continued that work. Baldwin's essays analyzed race and democracy through the civil rights era. Morrison's novels, including Beloved, examined the long-term psychological and historical impact of slavery. In 1993, Morrison became the first Black woman to win the Nobel Prize in Literature. Across these periods, Black literature served multiple roles. It documented lived experience, it expanded representation in publishing, and it introduced perspectives that were often absent from textbooks or official archives. Research in developmental psychology shows that representation in books and media can influence identity formation, particularly in adolescence. Seeing members of one's racial or cultural group portrayed as central characters rather than background figures can affect belonging and self-concept. In recent years, access to certain books has again become contested. According to PEN America, thousands of book bans have been recorded in U.S. public schools since 2021. A significant number of challenged titles feature Black characters or address race. Frequently challenged books include The Bluest Eye and The Hate U Give. From anti-literacy laws during slavery to contemporary book bans, access to reading has repeatedly been shaped by policy decisions. Historically, Black literature has influenced how history is recorded, and how identity is articulated, and how communities understand themselves within American society. Access to those stories has consistently shaped who is able to participate in cultural memory and how that memory is preserved. And that's big facts. All right. So, Keisha, before we get into this discussion, I want to give you a proper introduction. Keisha is a friend, a sister, a wife, a mom of 3 beautiful sons, and a certified bibliophile. I have never heard that word before. She is a 20-plus year aviation professional and a new plant mom. And she says books and plants are her happy space. So welcome, Keisha.
Thank you.
Keisha, I want to know first, how did you fall in love with Black literature?
When you said Langston Hughes earlier, I remember my mom bought me this kid's book, and it had all like little short poems in there, and Langston Hughes was one of them in there. And I was just like, so we do stuff, because we're not always seen, So I'm like, we do stuff. Look at us. And then as I got older, the reading, of course, got more mature. And so then it went to the Nikki Giovanni's and the Maya Angelou's. And then it went into the longer stories, the Omar Tyrees and the Sister Soldiers. And then you're like, oh, wow. Like you hear the nitty gritty stories that we have, but then you also have the stories of us making it out, or us doing things that you don't see us doing. And you realize that not only are these stories more vivid, but so is your mind. And I don't know if I would say there's one book that made me fall in love, but it's just knowing that there's more to a story than what you see. And when you read a book, you get a good bit more. And that's why, in my opinion, people always say the book is better.
Oh, it is.
Always. Always. And I love how you said we do stuff. Like, yeah, we do stuff. That's a brilliant and wonderful feeling. It's like the whole when everything just lights up and it opens up and there's this big horizon. It does. It's like our whatever communities we're in or whatever spaces we're around. It just does open up a whole new world. So I love that, Keisha.
And I was trying to think because I know my memory is bad, so I could be wrong in saying this, but I don't remember reading a single book growing up that had like a black main character besides that one that you mentioned, Keisha, the American Girl doll story. But did y'all read any books in school, like growing up, K through 12? With a
If it
black?
had a black person, they were a slave.
Yeah, yeah.
I just read some of everything. I think, and I was indiscriminate about what I read. It wasn't regarding whether or not it was black. I just know the Queen, Maya Angelou, stood out for me. But I don't know if I was specifically seeking out or, got into black authors as a result of that. There was a time when Terry McMillan had everything locked up,
Yeah.
in terms of books, and then they became movies, and that was wonderful too. But as far as I don't recall, because a lot of times I would be reading poetry, and there were certain poets that I liked who were not black, but I just thought their work was incredible. Um, yeah. Ntozake Shange, I know I'm saying that wrong, but her work, I think, is another one that got to me in high school. And, theater, because I did that in high school as well. And so that her work stands out also.
Yeah. I was thinking about like me not reading any books growing up that had a black main character, but I noticed because we have book fairs and things at school, I see a lot more different genres of books written by black authors. Like, because I know a lot of kids at our school, and even my son is into like fantasy type of books. And I notice even that they have books like Tristan Strong, that's like young adult lit or whatever, with black characters who are doing things that you would traditionally see white main characters do. So I love that. I love that for my kids and this generation that's coming up. Because I think it's important to see yourself as the main character.
We do stuff.
Yeah. We do.
We do stuff. And like, kind of to come in with what KK was saying, it's like, it's not that. I think when I was younger, reading, you just kind of read what was accessible to you. And it wasn't necessarily black lit or even black authors. And so when you did come across something that had a black character, you kind of read it with a little more vigor. Because I remember like some of my first reads were definitely not black authors. I remember getting my mother's Danielle Steele off of her. Like, I ain't had no business reading Danielle Steele, but I remember reading it. And I remember Lifetime doing the movie, and I was like, ooh, I read that book. And, thinking it was cool that I read a book that was now a movie, and seeing that happen now more is also something that's like, dang, look at us. We doing stuff.
That's going to be the motto for this episode. We do.
Yeah.
We doing stuff. And I like that, as popular as like Empire and Power are, like, we do other stuff.
Oh, God. Yeah.
We live regular lives.
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
Is there something that you feel like black literature gives us that other literature doesn't, because we've all read other things. What is it about Black literature that is super important and that we can't get from other works of literature?
The experience. There is no amount of research, no amount of immerse in the culture that one can do to really know what the experience is. And there, no eyes can see what we see, feel what we feel. Because I know even for me on a daily basis, sometimes I can't articulate what I'm experiencing as a Black woman in America right now. So I know that even if someone came up to me and asked me to explain it and help them write, there's nothing like it. And even how my experience differs from another Black woman, it's still different, and I still can't articulate her experience. So there's no way, if I can't, as a woman, Black woman, articulated it on a daily basis, there's no way your research can.
Right.
And yeah, it's nothing like it.
Yeah. And I find it interesting because I don't believe people can recreate an experience that they have not lived. I am a fan of historical fiction. So I like to read autobiographies. Like, one of my favorites is Will Smith. Like, I think his was incredible. And I should probably clarify that I've been on an audiobook kick. I have not been like picking up physical books. This has been me listening.
Listening is still reading.
Yes.
That is a big debate. Listening is still reading.
And in my opinion, it is. I'm on that side as well. But the experience of that man's book was incredible. And I actually read it before the slap. And so if you read the book, you understand why the slap happened, just based on his character. Trevor Noah. There's some others that I thought were incredible. Viola Davis, amazing. Like, those are our folks in present time telling their experience. Mariah Carey's was great too. So I like autobiographies, but I also like historical fiction. What I've discovered, however, is I have gotten through maybe half or 3/4 of a book and been like, you know what? I don't think this author is Black. But when I did my research and I looked up Black fiction, historical, I think these apps, and maybe because they're free, they don't care, but I think they need to do a better job of really solidifying who the author is, not just based on subject, because I want a Black author giving me historical fiction, because that creates a different lens versus a white author writing from a Black person's perspective, or even a white person's perspective. I don't want your perspective. Like, I really don't want the perspective of you or your ancestors. I want our perspective on this historical time. So for me, I wish there was a way to have better filters for that, because that's probably my favorite genre right now.
So we kind of are hitting on my next question is, like, what parts of Black life do you think only Black authors can capture accurately?
The experience, the culture, the community, the vibe, all the things. I don't think like I said, there is no amount of research, no amount of immersion that can get you that. And I remember, I want to say it was the early 2000s. I forget who did the show, but they did a show and they did whiteface and they did blackface. And they painted this white couple Black and sent them out into the world. And the Black people, or the fake Black people, the painted Black people, were like, we don't see racism at all. We were treated just fine. Nobody was mean to us. And I think, sometimes Black people tend to be overly sensitive and just went in on how our experience isn't really our experience just because you got painted brown for a few days. Like there is no amount of you can't fake this. And
Yep.
so I feel like when we don't read our stories however they come, if that's urban fiction, if that's contemporary romance, if that's nonfiction, like whatever it is, if you're not reading it, if you're not trying to learn, you can't catch it. You can't catch it. There's nothing like it.
It's interesting. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Shannon. I was just going to say it's interesting you brought that up because I think Ice Cube produced that show. And I don't know how many segments they were, but I know he did something similar.
I don't even know. I don't even, like, was it a show or was it an hour? I don't remember. I just remember looking at it and watching it and being like, this is stupid. He went in one store and he didn't get racially profiled. So he think racial profiling is not real.
Right.
Like, you can't fake this.
Right.
We live this. And even if I don't live it, you know somebody who has lived it.
That part.
And so you can't fake this.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think we get like vultured a lot. Like people take our culture, but even when they take elements of our culture, it still is not the same because they don't have that panache like we talked about. They don't have the soul of it. And so it's still not the same as when we do it.
I think there's a difference between that appropriation and when there's also shared culture. There are things that are going to be shared and that's fine. But there are certain things I think we're learning to gatekeep. I think we're learning to gatekeep. Like we really should have kept hip hop. That's a whole nother show. But I think there are things that we're learning to gatekeep and we're starting to do that now, in terms of culture. And that's because we sat back from all the stuff that's going on and said, we're good. We're just taking a break right now. And so as a result, I think this ability to hit the reset button has given us an opportunity to think about things like that. And, yeah, there's cultural, where you share out certain things, but there's also things that are definitely appropriated. Yeah.
To go on your gatekeep, we have to stop inviting everybody to the cookout. Like, stop. Because some of y'all ain't even invited.
Right.
and then there are things, going back to the original question, like what can we get from Black lit that we can't. I don't know how a Black person in New York lives. I don't know how a Black person in California lives. I don't know how a Black person in Alaska lives. And I feel like those experiences are only... Now that you can research as a Black person, you can go and research how another Black person lives, but you can't make it up. Because then when someone who is authentic reads it, I'm looking like, what is this? You must have asked ChatGPT. Because, come on now, let's be real. You can't fake it. I don't know what life is like in New York. I can go stay up there for a few weeks, a few months, and I can see and I can talk to people up there. But if I'm not Black, my experience up there with what they're doing is not going to be authentic, and it's not going to come across authentic. Stop inviting everybody to the cookout. That's it.
That part. Because we said that on the show. Yep. Don't do it. But I love that you brought that up because although there are things that we're not a monolith, we say that all the time too. But there are common threads that are cultural and I think that's what knits us together is those common threads, because I'm not where y'all are, but at the same time, I can be like, oh my God, your hair looks so good. Who did, and have an understanding of what we're discussing, or something that happens in the news, or the fact that so many books are being banned that either tell the truth or talk about our experiences. What we do have in this thread, just with the three of us alone, is that we know good and well the impetus behind the, actions that have led to these bans. And I always say, for people who are listening, for sure, if you have a library, libraries will often put a banned book section up. If there's a school or a university or something like that. And I think you can even find them online. Find out what those banned books are. Buy those books. Buy them for somebody else. Have them for the sake of posterity in your collection. We need to think about that. And I love how you have those books in your house. You got 3 kids, and Shan, I know you got 2. I'm sure you got books in the house. I share this story because it's something that formed me as a poet, as a person who was like, I'm going to grow up and be a writer. I remember being little, and one of the things that my parents did was they made sure we had encyclopedias in the house, and they made sure we had random books and Highlights magazine. Y'all probably don't even remember.
I do remember Highlights.
Okay. But Highlights fed into that. Like, soon as the Highlights got in there, I'm like all in it, right? And in addition to that, because this is one thing that people don't go over other people's houses and do that stuff anymore. I would go over to my aunt or my uncle's house, and they had books similar to where you're sitting right now. And I would look through those books, and every time I visit, I could finish a book by our visits on the weekend to my aunt or uncle's house. Or I could read a magazine over there, or I could start. But books were always accessible to me. And taking away that accessibility would have meant my life would have taken a whole different trajectory. But because we had family who had books in the house, books in front of your face, and they encouraged you to read. When my uncle passed in 2019, he was like, well, I got stuff over here. What do you want? I said, I want your Khalil Gibran books. Because when I was a little girl, I would go to my grandma's house. My uncle would be there, and he would be reading Khalil Gibran, and I picked up those books. That's the kind of stuff that impacts forever. And I can only imagine. I feel like I need to reach through the screen and start looking at your titles right now.
Now, don't get me wrong. I read, but I also read.
I know that's right. But yeah, that's just a little, sharing of my history with books. And I'm just curious, when did reading become a part of the fabric of who you are?
Wow.
I'm curious.
That is a great question. And it's kind of like super deep too, because who are we really until we know? Because in your 20s, you kind of just like, I'm 20, and you're young and you're doing these young things. And I think maybe I was still reading, maybe not. I was fresh in my career. So I definitely wasn't trying to read after coming out of college. What? Read for what? And then marriage and kids, and who are you really then? And I think once I hit a certain age that we won't say, I started realizing I can't do for anybody else until I do for me first. And that has been a driving motto for the last year or so. And saying that helped me because I was getting so tired. I was getting so over it. I was getting so anxious because I'm trying to do for everybody and not do for me. And when I finally started doing for me, and that was buying all the plants that I have no idea how to keep up with, but I'm trying, getting all these books, finding time to do something that made me happy made it easier for me to do for others. And when I want to say last year, I was reading, but last year I kicked it into overdrive. I started going to all the book fests. I started buying all the books, because what you don't read in that Kindle fine print is that your book is a lease. So if they ever decide that they want to ban the books and give no more access to the books, they can take it from your Kindle. And it can no longer be yours because you are leasing a copy of that book. So then I started going back and buying all my favorite books. I started buying all the books that I think we needed to have in the house. And in doing that, I realized, we doing stuff. We really out here doing stuff. We are poets. We are billionaires. We are construction moguls. We are doing stuff, and it's not just selling drugs.
Right.
So I think I really, really fell in love with reading during COVID, when we had nothing else to do but figure out who we were. And I was like, okay, so what we doing? And diving into these worlds of these authors, like, I'm reading this stuff and I'm like, are they okay? Do we need to send, because how did you do that? And this is not a writer's room. This is one person with editors, if they have the resources. But sometimes, especially with these indie authors, they don't necessarily have the resources to get editors, to get multiple editors, to get multiple eyes on the piece, to make sure that it is of top tier quality. How did you do that? Some days I have trouble putting two sentences together, and just finding these stories, and then finding myself, or bits of myself in these stories, and seeing that you can overcome, you can grow, you can learn, you can change. And that was my love, black romance. When I would read and see myself in some of these main characters, and see some of the silly things they were doing, and know that I did some of these silly things, I was like, yeesh. But, she found her Prince Charming. So, there's just so many possibilities when you pick up a book. Lamar. I did not appreciate him enough on Reading Rainbow. Because all you got to do is take a look. It's in any book.
Take a look in a book. And now we got Michael Threats. Is it Threats or Threats?
I don't know how to pronounce it, though. I know, yeah.
But I love how he not only encourages book reading in his time on Reading Rainbow, he's also shared very openly his mental health struggles, but he still keeps going. And that in and of itself is encouraging too. So yeah, take a look in a book.
Keisha, is Black romance your genre of choice?
It depends on the day.
Okay.
But it is my it's my primary go-to, and in some ways I consider it Black fantasy. Because your man ain't finna do all the things that this man in this book just did. Come on, let's be honest. Let's be real. He might be Prince Charming for the first year, maybe two, if we look. He gon' fart, and he gon' poop, and it's gonna stink, and y'all gonna argue. These are things that are going to happen. And I think that, to me, has always been the funniest thing. Is they talk about these couples being married and being together all the time. So you done smelt his stuff, right? Because it ain't gonna work if you don't smell it first. You gotta know how. But yeah, I enjoy Black romance because, again, it gives us a look at what is possible. If we heal, we can be these perfect people in this perfect story, but we have to do the work. And whatever that looks like, if that means you finding therapy in a book, finding therapy in a real person, whatever you have to do to get to where you're happy, we can live happily ever after. Maybe.
Yep.
We can. And I have a
Not all
piece
about
about
struggle.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the whole conversation in the book world. Can we get some stuff that's not struggle love? Can we get some stuff that's not raising a man? Can we get some, like, because it's possible. And that's not everyone's story, but that is some people's story.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think that a thing about Black literature is that, yes, we have common, like, shared experiences as Black people, but we're also nuanced. And so, like, looking at the different stories, I feel like also kind of shows us how nuanced we are, and not being a monolith, like the differences in perspective. Like every Christmas, I buy my kids a book, and typically I try to find a book that has a Black main character. And we are middle class. So if I can find a story of a Black middle class kid, like, I want you to read this because you can see yourself in it, and you can see, like, representation is so important.
It
When
really is.
when I made it a point to buy my kids stories, I made it a point to buy, if it had people on the cover, it had to be at least somebody brown on there. If there were people on the cover and nobody was brown, I was not getting it. If it had to either have animals or somebody brown. That was the criteria, and that's still like what we have. And it's to the point now where my family's starting to notice, and they're starting to do the same things. And like you said, it's representation. I want them to see that we do things. They have options. The world is literally theirs. But if they don't see it, they're not going to know. And they're going to think that one thing is the norm. And that one thing is all that's possible. And that's just not the case. So I'm trying to show them now we do things.
Yeah, my little girl, she used to love this book. I don't remember what it's called. It might be called Don't Touch My Hair or something like that. But she used
It's
to
back
love.
there. You want me to go get it?
Oh, you got. Yeah, she used to love that book, Don't Touch My Hair. And there was another one I saw because I think we talked about this on the last episode. Like, I'm noticing that my daughter is very creative. She loves art. And so there was another book that I got her that showed a little Black girl that was being creative, and she was basically painting her story in it. And she loved that one too. It was celebrating that. Keisha, I was going to ask you to give us some book suggestions so that our audience has somewhere to start. If you haven't been reading Blacklit, what are some titles that are your favorites that you've read so far?
The first thing I have to say for anybody who wants to start reading is you got to find what you enjoy. What do you like to read? If you don't like romance, like rom-coms, you're not going to like contemporary romance. If you don't like mysteries, you're not going to like a mystery if you read it. So you got to figure out what you like. Psychological thrillers. And the thing too that makes me so passionate about Blacklit is that for every author out, like for every genre, there is a Black author that wrote there's something in that genre that a Black author wrote. And I make it a point for myself and my family to practice co-op as often as we possibly can, to spend our Black dollars with as many Black businesses as we can. And a lot of Black authors are independent. There are a lot of them now that are getting traditional publishing deals. So it's going to be a little bit easier to find them, but a lot of them are independent. So they're selling them out of their homes, out of their own warehouses, out of their own businesses. So to buy from them directly is always a plus. But favorites from certain genres, for your psychological mysteries, S.A. Cosby is a good author for that one. Let's see. Contemporary romance, Takira Allen. She is one of my absolute favorites. She has the first book I ever read by her was Last Stop from Innocence. It's set in like the 90s. And she absolutely captures what it was to walk around with a Discman clipped to your belt, the headphones on, being in the moment, the summer heat, doing block parties. That book was a good one. I recently read a book that made me laugh, which was kind of weird because it was like a murder mystery book. It reminded me of Murder, She Wrote. Y'all remember that old show?
Mm-hmm.
If she was like a Black diner owner. Like the banter in it was just like I'm watching a Hallmark special of Murder, She Wrote, but it was called Savvy Summers and the Sweet Potato Crimes.
I love that.
And I finished it and I was like, oh, that was cute. But was it supposed to be cute because it was a murder mystery? But it was cute. And it was as fluffy as a murder mystery could be. And I was like, you know what? That was cute. That was cute. And so depending on what you want to read, because it's called being a mood reader. If you don't want to read a murder mystery and you're not about suspense, you're not going to want to read it. If you think that romance is not where you want to spend your time, reading a romance is going to make you roll your eyes. So, I mean, it really depends on what you want to read. There's a book now that's become so popular. It's called The Secret World of Maggie Gray. And it's more like magical, but it takes place on like an HBCU. And she's getting her traditional release this week, I think. And she's having a big release party at Barnes & Noble here in the Atlanta area. And I remember reading that book when she released it as an indie author. And to see where she's come from, this indie author who just did it alone with no real editor, to getting the traditionally published deal with an editor. I'm like, see, this is the stuff. This is the stuff.
That is. It's almost like, it sounds like fantasy. Would you call it fantasy? The book?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely touch of fantasy, because it's that magical aspect that Harry Potter gave everybody, but make it Black at a HBCU, that kind of thing. And like I said, to read it when she first released it, and then to see all the hype and all the exposure she's getting now, I love that. And there's a couple other authors who are getting traditional deals now for books that they've released years ago. So what you want to read really depends on what you like. And the thing about reading that a lot of people sometimes forget is that it's art. Mm-hmm. Reading is literature. It's all art. So art is subjective. There are going to be things that I will rave about and say it's my absolute favorite that you could read and be like, that's it.
Yeah.
And vice versa. It's art.
I have not even scratched the surface, so I'm going to have to look up some of these titles. We're going to leave you a list of some of Keisha's suggestions in the show notes, so look for that. Well, if this conversation is resonating with you, make sure that you like this video and share it with somebody who needs a new book recommendation. Since Lisa's not here today, we don't have a piece, so we're going to skip right on to the call to action for the culture. So at the end of our show, Keisha, we always do a call to action for the culture where we call our community to act in some way. I'm going to let you go last, Keisha, so you can think about what you want to say. Did I say Lisa or Keisha? I don't know what I said. Keisha, not Lisa. Lisa's not here. Y'all, I think I'm starting perimenopause and my brain does not work. Okay, so just excuse my blunders because the wheels don't turn like they're supposed to right now. But anyway, KK, what is your call to action for the culture?
My call to action is to get books in your home. Go to libraries, support them. Buy books and buy banned books. There are books that you want that we haven't even covered that I think we need to have in our homes. Without Sanctuary is one of them. I tend to read different books from a Black perspective. So Without Sanctuary is one. I also think that since we're having a conversation about children being, or people being eaten and essay and all this stuff, we need to get The Delectable Negro because they used to eat us. So what a chipper note. I just think there are certain books that need to be in our homes, and we need to have them, and we need to pass them on, and we need to keep them within our families because that's part of our legacy. Without this information, it is lost, and the goal is to remove our information and education from our homes. And so we need to do everything possible, including getting books and literature in front of our children at the earliest ages possible. So get the books, get them in your home, support the libraries, support small bookstores, support folks who are supporting keeping these books in circulation. That's my call to action.
Absolutely. Research shows you need to start the kids reading from the very beginning. That's going to set them up for success. Well, I'm calling the culture to find Black books for your kids. I try to make it a point to buy books that have the Black main characters, like I said, because I think that representation is so important, especially at the ages that my kids are, elementary and middle school. They're kind of figuring out things about life and who they are. So I think that when you buy books for your kids, well, if you don't buy books for your kids, buy books for your kids. And then when you buy books for your kids, make sure to include some with Black main characters. Not that they can't read other things, they should read other things, but they still need to see that they can have main character energy too. Also, when you buy a book by a Black author, you're supporting a Black creative. So that's important too. Keisha, what's your call to action?
My call to action is free. Get a library card. Get a library card. It is so important to not only support your local libraries, but to get that library card. It, especially with libraries they're going digital now. Every book that you could ever, not ever, but a majority of the books that are out there now are digital. So you can download an app and check out a book from the comfort of your home. Once you get that library card, you have access to movies. You have access to old TV, not old, but TV shows, just like a streaming platform like Netflix. There are platforms like that your library card will open you up to. All you have to do is get the card. Get your kids a card. In getting your card, you're also doing something for the community by registering to vote. So these are just get the card. It's, I mean, we have to support our local libraries. Just the other day, my county sent out a notice that they were closing on Saturdays because of funding. Like, we've got to understand that when they pull the books, they're trying to pull your knowledge, because without the books you can't learn, and then they're force feeding you what they want you to know. So it's up to us to read and support our local communities and libraries. Get a library card.
Yes. 100%. And we need to be registering to vote because it is extra important, especially right now. But my kids, I know that's primarily how they read, Keisha, is on their iPads. They're using the Libby app and downloading books because at our library, they have a lot of older books, and sometimes they'll have one book, but they want to read a series of something. So they'll find it on that app instead of the actual physical book. So that's been helpful for us. I'm also calling the culture to click that plus in Apple Podcast or that subscribe button in YouTube. If you enjoyed this episode, that will help you keep up with all the latest episodes that we drop this season of Blacktivities. We love to hear what you love about the show, so let us know in the comments. And until we meet again, well, actually, before we meet again, I always forget because we don't have guests that often, to thank Keisha for being our guest. You've been a great guest, Keisha.
Thank you. I tried. I was nervous.
Let everybody know how we can follow you.
Follow me on Instagram, Planted, Booked, Rooted. I will be at Black Romance Book Fest. I will be at Wine with Writers. I will be at Indie Love. Black book festivals are popping, so they're everywhere. And those are just the 3 I'm going to be at, but find you one. They're out there.
She is really about that Black lit life.
I love it. It's the knowledge and it's the skate. Their reality is perfect.
Yeah.
And it wraps up in 300 pages.
All right. Until we meet again.
Been great. Yeah. Until we meet again, kings and queens keep doing big things. Is that it, Shan? You was about to say that?
That's it. That's it.
All right, y'all.